Hey, Beastista, and welcome back to Season 8 of the VDL. Here we are for Week 2. This week I'm playing against Masinko and the Drowzy Dracozolts. So here's the matchup. So the Dracozolts team are incredibly powerful. And it, not only do they have a lot of powerful Pokemon against me specifically, they were actually, I believe, our Week 0 number 2 overall team, which means most coaches believe that it's a very strong team in the general sense. Looking at their team for against mine specifically, some really notably annoying Pokemon are Tapu Koko because it outspeeds my entire team. Liepard because if it has the Unburden activated, can get a +1 defense, and it can also outspeed my entire team and also have faster Fake Out than Weavile in addition to that. Other than that, Celesteela is incredibly powerful mon generically and has good coverage into my team on both the physical special side and kind of be either. And then Salazzle is another Fake Out mon with good fire coverage, which hits my entire team. The rest of the Pokemon aren't super concerning. I wouldn't be surprised to see something like Walrein or Dubwool or Virizion. But with that, let's get into what I decided to bring. So here's the team I decided to bring. So I decided to start with Choice Scarf Darmanitan. Choice Scarf Darmanitan is one of my cleanest answers to Tapu Koko and Celesteela, because Flare Blitz should one-shot most Celesteelas, and Earthquake should one-shot Earthquake or Icicle Crash should one-shot most Tapu Kokos. Weavile with Focus Sash is kind of there just as a means to be a little disruptive, get some good damage. The Fake Out is very good into most of my opponent's leads, other than the Liepard lead. And Triple Axle can do pretty good damage into almost everything on their team. Piloswine is there as a electric immunity for Tapu Koko. Ground and ice hit everything on their team for at least neutral, but most of them for super effective. And then I have the Ice Shard as just a priority move to finish up some low HP mons or mons that are have Focus Sash, for example. Following that, we have the Rotom with Choice Specs. Choice Specs Thunderbolt from Rotom should one-shot a non-AV Walrein. It should one-shot a Celesteela, and in general, it does big damage into their team. Other than that, Thunderbolt, we got Blizzard, just, in case they have some electric resist mons, something like one of their ground mons that I might not expect. Electro Web for speed control, and Volt Switch to just, switch out and switch into something like Piloswine or my next mon, which is Mr. Rime. Mr. Rime, I have Assault Vest. I gave it Screen Cleaner this week because none of its other abilities were really relevant, and so if they decide to go with like Screens Tapu Koko, I can switch in Mr. Rime and get rid of their screens. Mr. Rime has Fake Out, Thunderbolt, an Ice Beam, and then I decided on Icy Wind just for a little bit of speed control. And then finally we have Frostlass with Icy Wind, Thunder Wave, and Hex, so we get that combination, and then Ice Beam as its final move. Other than that, that's kind of the general idea. I don't have too many like dedicated leads, but I definitely think all these Pokemon can be pretty useful. And with that, let's get into the match. So here we are for game 1. So looking at my opponent's team, they have about 5 of the 6 Pokemon I prepped against. The Virizion's the only one I wasn't 100% expecting. So with Virizion, I question a little bit on some of the mons I might want to bring, but for the most part, I definitely want to lead Weavile until they prove that Weavile's not good. And I think Mr. Rime is definitely the most versatile Pokemon, and Darmanitan is kind of the best, in the back cleaning up Pokemon in the end game. And so the big question is did I want Rotom or Piloswine as my last mon? So Piloswine is a little bit better into the Tapu Koko and the Salazzle, and Rotom's a little bit better into the Weavile and Celesteela. And I decided to go with the Rotom, and with that, let's get into the match. So they end up leading Liepard, Tapu Koko, and I lead the Mr. Rime and Weavile. And so here we're going to see that they have electric terrain, and the big question is whether they have electric seed. If they have electric seed, they're pretty much guaranteed to be Unburdened instead of Prankster, and they do in fact reveal to be electric seed and reveal that they're Unburdened. My Weavile also shows that it's slower than both of them, which is unsurprising. But with this, I decided to go for Fake Out on Tapu Koko, and I considered just double Fake Out, expecting a Fake Out on the Liepard. However, I decided to go for Icy Wind instead because lowering their speed and letting Weavile outspeed the Tapu Koko seems really good on turn 2. And so here the Liepard just goes for the Fake Out on Weavile, which is pretty much expected. And they go for a Volt Switch into the Mr. Rime, doing very little damage, but switching out. And the switch out is now going to take an Icy Wind and also get its speed lower, which is pretty useful for me. And it ends up being Celesteela, which is the switch in, and I get an Icy Wind that connects on both and lowering both of their speeds by 1 stage and doing a pretty good chunk of damage into the Liepard and not bad damage into Celesteela, especially for how weakened it is and how bulky Celesteela is. So here the big question is which of these two mons do I care the most about, and I decide to go for just the triple axle into the Liepard with the hopes that kills, and Thunderbolt into the Celesteela. So Celesteela, assuming it's not super bulky, the Thunderbolt is going to do probably about 60-70%, unless it's like a Wakan Berry or Assault Vest. And so here we actually reveal that we're actually faster than a -1 speed Liepard with Unburden. And the triple axle goes into the Liepard, just barely missing out on the KO, and Liepard goes for a Baton Pass. So this Baton Pass is interesting. It gives a defense boost to whatever comes in, but it also gives a speed drop to whatever comes in because I got the Icy Wind drop on it. And so the Tapu Koko now is at -1 speed, but is pretty bulky on the defensive side. So here they do reveal to be Wakan Berry. So my Thunderbolt ends up doing, still pretty good damage, but it still has about 50% from that. And the Celesteela reveals to be Steel Roller, which does huge damage to Mr. Mime, killing me. I think my Mr. Mime probably would have taken an Iron Head from that, but the Steel Roller is way too much power, and with it we also reveal that it's a attack rather than a more bulky, focused Celesteela. And so here the big question is, do I want Darmanitan or Rotom? Both of them should be able to kill the Celesteela, and so I decided to go with Rotom because Rotom's going to be able to take any attack from Tapu Koko pretty well and should be able to one-shot the Celesteela from this range. And so here I just deciding if I want to go for the triple axle into the Celesteela and maybe attack into Koko with Rotom, but the obvious play is just triple axle into Tapu Koko and go for the Thunderbolt. I considered Electro Web here for a second because there's a chance that Electro Web might actually kill Celesteela from this range, and lowering the speed in the future could be relevant, but I just decided that more damage was better, and guaranteeing kill on Celesteela was the better option as well. So here we get a triple axle into the Koko, and we just do a little bit under 50%, and Koko goes for an Electro Web. And this is a little bit awkward because I don't like being at -1 with my Weavile, because now something like Slazzle in the back can outspeed, and Liepard without the Unburden boost might also outspeed. However, I am able to get the kill on the Celesteela, which is definitely unsurprising since I would kill at max HP now that it has no Wakan Berry. And so here they end up bringing out the Slazzle, and this is definitely a little bit awkward. The Slazzle is going to outspeed me, and if they just go for something like a Heat Wave Electro Web, there's a good chance they get the double knockout. And so here I decide to go for the Ice Shard into the Slazzle in case it has something like a Focus Sash, and I decide to just go for the Thunderbolt, and then the main question is which of the two should I target into. And so here I definitely think that there's an argument for me to Ice Shard Tapu Koko instead, because it is somewhat unlikely that Salazzle is Focus Sash because the threat of me running Hell, and if Hell is up, it breaks any Focus Ashes. However, I do go for the Ice Shard into the Salazzle, and it does a little bit damage, not great damage, and the Heat Wave here ends up double connecting and killing both my Pokemon. I'm definitely surprised that the Rotom died from that Heat Wave, because I think it normally should survive. However, it reveals to be Life Orb, and so that is one of the reasons why it survived. However, the Electro Wave would have probably finished it up. So here we have Darmanitan as a Pokemon, and we have pretty much one out, which is hoping that Salazzle doesn't have Protect. If Salazzle doesn't have Protect, an Earthquake should get a double KO here, and then should also be able to kill Liepard from the range it's at. And then in addition, Coco, I should be able to take an attack from Coco pretty comfortably. So even if they protect with Coco and then come out and fake out, I should be okay. And here they do reveal that they have Protect on Salazzle, which definitely is not great for me. And the Earthquake ends up going here, and we actually reveal that there's Shuka Berry on the Tapu Koko. And so this definitely is a little bit awkward, actually, because if I actually Ice Sharded into Tapu Koko instead of Salazzle in the previous turn, I think that that Earthquake probably kills. And if that Earthquake kills, I actually have a chance of winning the game if they miss a Heat Wave. However, now the game is pretty much guaranteed over because, you know, I'm now slower than both these Pokemon after getting the speed drop from the Electro Web, and they are able to just hit me with an Overheat and get the kill. So this game definitely was pretty close in my opinion. I think that if I Ice Sharded into Tapu Koko instead of Salazzle, there's a little bit of chance I could have won. With that, let's get into game 2. We'll see how that one goes. Here we are for game 2. So one of the big things that I want is I definitely want Paloswine on my team somewhere. I think it seems very important to deal with the Tapu Koko and the Salazzle, which were definitely some issues in my game. And in addition to that, I'm considering leading Darmanitan just as a means to do some big damage in the early turns. And so the big question is do I want to lead Mr. Rime Darmanitan or Weavile Darmanitan? The plus side of Mr. Rime is that it is a little bit bulkier. The plus side of Weavile is if they lead something like Salazzle, it's better. I considered running a Paloswine lead instead of the Darmanitan lead. But I decided that Darmanitan is better as the lead based on just, you know, being able to do damage and having Paloswine in the back as a good switch in and just, you know, a good damage. And then we decided to Rotom on the back instead of the Frostlass or the Weavile, the Rotom just as a means to do some big damage into something like Walrein. So with that, let's get into the match. So they end up leading the exact same lead, and I have the Mr. Rime and Darmanitan. And so here, it's definitely a little bit awkward. I can definitely see a couple different arguments of moves to make. There's a lot of options on basically if they go for Fake Out or not. And so the big question is do I want to go for Fake Out with Mr. Rime, or do I want to go with something like an Icy Wind or a Thunderbolt? And I decide to go for the Fake Out into Tapu Koko, and then I'm planning on going for an Icicle Shard or Icicle Crash. And the option is Tapu Koko, which would threaten to one-shot it, and Liepard. And I decided to go for the Tapu Koko. And Tapu Koko ends up going for Protect, which ends up being a worst possible case for me on turn 1. It's definitely really sad because if I would have faked out into Liepard or Icicle Crash into Liepard, I think I'd consider myself in a very good shape for turn 1, or even if I would have Icy Wind and Icicle Crash into Tapu Koko. But with what ends up happening here, I end up having a terrible turn 1. So here I decided to go for the Icy Wind and switch out in the Darmanitan. And I decided to switch out into the Paloswine because I think there's a good chance that they're going to go for an Electro Web or maybe even a Volt Switch into the Darmanitan here. So we get the Paloswine in, and they end up going for a Foul Play into the Darmanitan spot, which is now Paloswine, but however, Paloswine still takes quite a bit of damage. However, they end up going for the Volt Switch into the Mr. Rime and getting a lucky crit, which is definitely awkward. However, I am able to get a nice Icy Wind off, whatever their switch in is, Salazzle here. And so with this, we are able to get a double connect with the Icy Wind, lowering both of their speeds and getting a little bit of chip damage into both these Pokemon. Honestly, a fair amount of damage into the Liepard spot. So here I decide to just go for an Ice Beam into the Liepard and a High Horsepower into the Salazzle. The High Horsepower should kill Salazzle no matter what, and the Ice Beam is a good damage into the Liepard and is, you know, a good read if they Baton Pass into Tapu Koko again. So they end up doing the Baton Pass from the Liepard again, getting a -1 speed but a +1 defense like it did in game 1. However, this time they switch in Walrein instead of Tapu Koko, And so it's a little bit awkward. However, I get a really lucky overheat miss, which but in the end that probably doesn't do too much because I do end up doing almost no damage into the wall rain and get the high horsepower and getting the kill here. So yeah, the overheat almost certainly kills, even though I'm AV. However, you know, there's a chance I could have survived that. The ice beam ends up not doing too much damage at all. However, they are able to bring out the light bar, and so the light bar is now not at -1. And so the easiest play here is just Thunderbolt and go for the high horsepower into the light bar spot because it does the most damage and also is a good if they end up trying to target Tapu Koko or switch in Tapu Koko. So the follow play ends up going into this Mr. Rime doing a lot of damage, just barely missing out on the KO, which is definitely really awkward. However, my Thunderbolt ends up doing just a little bit around 50%, and so Walrein might die from another one. And here the high horsepower just barely misses out on the KO. They go for the Hydro Pump, they get a connect, and I just barely survive. So both my Pokemon are incredibly low HP. So here, you know, I don't really have a switch on I really want. And so here, the Thunderbolt into Walrein is definitely the play. And we just need to hope they don't go for a Sucker Punch on the light part, because that'd be really bad, because Ice Shard should be able to kill it if they don't go for something like a Sucker Punch. So here we go, we get the Ice Shard, which is able to kill the light part, which is really nice, preventing it from attacking. So Mr. Rime is able to come in, or get its attack into Thunderbolt, which just barely misses out on the KO, and the Body Press goes into the Piloswine, killing it. Another thing that I didn't really mention is we are 100% positive that Walrein is Assault Vest based on the damage calcs I've been doing with these Thunderbolts. And so here the big question is do I want Darmanitan or Rotom? We know Tapu Koko is their last Mon, so Darmanitan is just pretty, you know, clean damage into either of these Mons, and the Rotom is, however, able to survive attacks a lot more cleanly. And so here I decide to go for the Darmanitan, and they end up bringing out the Tapu Koko. Here, the big question is, like, I obviously am just going to Thunderbolt into the Walrein or go for an Icy Wind, which, you know, it doesn't really matter too much. If, you know, the big thing is how am I going to try to kill Tapu Koko? Icicle Crash does more damage than Flare Blitz, however, it only has a 90% accuracy. So I decide to go for the more accurate move in Flare Blitz. It should kill most Tapu Kokos unless they're incredibly bulky. And this is just kind of a way to mitigate any possible bad endgames, because if I don't get any damage onto this Tapu Koko, there's a good chance I can lose. However, the Tapu Koko ends up surviving the Flare Blitz, which means it's incredibly bulky. And with that, the Dazzling Gleam is able to kill my Mr. Rime. And now it's back down to a 2v1. However, I feel like I'm in pretty good shape since both these Pokemon are incredibly low, and Rotom should take attacks from Tapu Koko pretty well. And so here the big question is do I go for the Electro Web or the Thunderbolt? Electro Web 100% kills both of these Pokemon. However, it has a chance to miss, and I decided to click that instead of going for the Thunderbolt because I'm unsure how much damage this Dazzling Gleam is. The Dazzling Gleam, however, crits and still does less than 50%. So given the fact that I knew that Walrein was Assault Vest, I definitely think I misplayed here, and I should have Thunderbolted into the Walrein, because that would have been a guaranteed win and definitely gave them an out of winning this game that could have been 100% guaranteed. So definitely a little bit awkward. However, I'm happy to get the game 2 win, and with that, let's go to game 3. So here for game 3. So game 2 went pretty well, and I definitely think that a big aspect of that was Piloswine. So I definitely guarantee want to bring Piloswine again, and I think I want to lead Piloswine because I think that if they do the same lead, Piloswine kind of is just a good answer to that lead. And so the big question is what do I want to pair with it? I can see justification between Weavile and Mr. Rime, and I kind of a little bit leaning towards Frostlass just to bring. However, I don't know if it's the best lead option. And so I'm considering, you know, these 4, which is Frostlass, Piloswine, Mr. Rime, and Darmanitan in the back. Rotom doesn't seem the best into anything other than the Walrein, and this, because Celesteela does have the way to probably one-shot it with the Steel Roller and has the Wakan Berry, and so Mr. Rhyme definitely is kind of, and Darmanitan definitely seem like the safest answers, and so I think this is kind of what I'm leading. I'm not positive if I should have led the Frostlass over one of the other Pokemon though, like Mr. Rhyme as the lead though. With that, let's get into the game. I end up leading the same exact lead in Liepard and Tapu Koko, and I lead the Frostlass and Paloswine here. And so my Frostlass is very bulky, and so it should honestly take a Foul Play and a Electro Web, or a Foul Play and a Dazzling Gleam. And so the big question is do I want to go for something like a Thunder Wave into the Liepard to completely neuter its speed, or do I want to go just for an Icy Wind to get a little damage and lower both of these Pokemon speed? And so I decided to go for the Icy Wind and the Icicle Crash into Liepard. This was definitely a misplay. I should have gone for High Horsepower into Liepard because it's actually more accurate and has a higher base power. So that was basically just a very dumb mistake though. So Liepard ends up going for the Foul Play, and it does massive damage because it gets a crit, and that crit is terribly unlucky for me because it allows this Dazzling Gleam to kill me, making my entire turn pretty much useless. With the Frostlass, and Frostlass kind of being bad. The Icicle Crash goes into the Liepard, and it does reasonable damage, but Liepard definitely takes another attack. And so here I just decided to bring out the Mr. Rhyme. The reason why I bring out Mr. Rhyme is because Liepard outspeeds my Darmanitan, and so I definitely need to do something like get some damage onto the Liepard, or try to get an Icy Wind off. And so here I just go for the Fake Out and High Horsepower into the Liepard because I realized that High Horsepower is more accurate and does more damage into the Liepard. And so we do in fact get that Fake Out off. The Tapu Koko goes for a Volt Switch, which does, not huge damage because of my AV and just general bulk. And they end up bringing out the Celesteela. And the Higher Horsepower ends up doing pretty good damage into the Liepard, and Liepard's at pretty low HP. And so here I decided to go for the Icy Wind and the Icicle Crash and Celesteela. The Icy Wind looks like it probably should kill Liepard out from this range, and the -1 Celesteela, based on some of the speed calcs, looks like my Paloswine might be able to outspeed, and so I might be able to get a double hit, both hits off before Celesteela can move. So Liepard goes for the Foul Play into the Mr. Rhyme, doing huge damage once again, and the Icy Wind double connects, which is pretty nice for me, and is able to kill the Liepard as expected and lowers the speed of the Celesteela. However, I'm not feeling particularly good about my position right here until I realize I do outspeed them at -1, which is pretty good, and I get this Icicle Crash into Celesteela, and right here I definitely need a crit or I think the game's over, and I get the flinch. The flinch was definitely needed here to have any out based from my opinion, and so that was definitely very big. And so here Salazzle comes out, and I feeling pretty good because Paloswine should have a free High Horsepower into the Salazzle to kill it, or they're going to have to Fake Out, and if they Fake Out, I should have a clean Thunderbolt into Celesteela, which should be able to kill the Celesteela here. And so we have a pretty clean situation here, and they go for the Heat Wave, which is able to kill the Paloswine, or kill the Mr. Rhyme, doesn't kill the Paloswine, and because I'm faster, this High Horsepower should guarantee kill it, and then I have the 2v1. However, I miss the High Horsepower. The flinch was huge for me the previous turn, but then this high Horsepower miss ends up devastating me, getting rid of almost all my outs, because I think I actually am in an advantageous position if I hit that High Horsepower, because I am able to just go for double Rock Slide and probably, or Flare Blitz into the Flare Blitz, or Icicle Crash should kill Celesteela and Tapu Koko. But here now my only out is just to Rock Slide. Rock Slide should likely kill Salazzle from this range, and probably doesn't kill Celesteela, but it has a chance to flinch. However, I end up missing Celesteela completely, and the Rock Slide does in fact kill the Salazzle, but sadly, Celesteela has a guaranteed attack off, and it gets the Heavy Slam, able to get the kill. So this is definitely a really sad end game. The Icicle Crash flinch ended up giving me an out in which I was almost guaranteed to win. And then I end up missing the high horsepower, which then ends up getting me into a situation where I pretty much guaranteed to lose unless I get incredibly lucky on flinches. Definitely was a fun match. Sad to go 0-2 for the start of the season. This is my worst start in VDL history so far. And so hopefully I can turn it around, but I have a really tough division, and so I definitely need to play well and prep well, and so hopefully y'all enjoyed this match. Thank you for watching.